Okay, now we have equations and functions. Consider the equation y minus 3 equals the square root of 4 minus x. Does this equation represent y as a function? Well, step 1, I'm going to solve for y. So if I solve for y, let's see what we get. We get the equation y is equal to 3 plus the square root of 4 minus x. Now, this is in fact a function. This is a function. Because every one value that I put in for x, I get exactly one y value back. So, note that if I put in something like x is equal to 0, then y is equal to 3 plus the square root of 4 minus 0, which is equal to 3 plus 2, which is equal to 5. So you'll notice that I put in one x value, and I get out one y value. And that's going to be true for all x values that I put in there. So now, if I want to find the domain, I'm going to have y is equal to 3 plus the square root of 4 minus x. And what I want you to notice is that the only restriction, remember, your domain is what can you have. So the only thing I really concern myself is what happens underneath the square root. I can't take square roots of negative numbers. So what we have is we need the 4 minus x to be greater than or equal to 0. Now don't forget that you can have equal to 0. So it's not just greater than. So thus, 4 has to be greater than or equal to x. Or in other words, x has to be less than or equal to 4. It's saying the same thing. So your domain is going to be, and again in interval notation, the way you would say this is all the x less than 4. So it's going to be negative infinity to 4. And you do include the 4. Alright, next we want to find the range. So the range is how far down to how far high does it go? Well, the thing that you need to note here first, before we do anything, is that note for the equation, square root of 4 minus x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Right? This can never be negative. So what we see is that if we have y is equal to 3 plus the square root of 4 minus x, we see that this part of it is always going to be bigger than 0. So for our range, what we see, and I'll put this down, for our range, we see that y has to be greater than or equal to 3. So our range in interval notation is going to be 3 to infinity. Next one. Does the equation y as a function of x? So which function are we talking about? We have 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. So if I draw this out, or if I solve for the variable, I'm going to get x is equal to 3 halves. Now that's regardless of the y. So if I look at a table, let's consider a table for this. And I have my x and my y. Notice that the y is not listed, so I can make up any numbers, say -1, pi, doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just making up numbers, but no matter what number I make up, we end up seeing that the x is always the same. X is not changing. If I were to draw a graph of this, it would look like, again, here's x, and here's y. If I drew a graph of this, I would see x is equal to -2/3, regardless of it. This is not a function. So, back to my original question, this is not a function. Now, most of the time when we talk about functions, we talk about domain and range. But since in this case this is not a function, we don't have to. So we don't have to worry about that.